They said, "Come home. Dad, we need you for Thanksgiving." I arrived, waited, cried. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The message came through, blinking on my screen like a beacon: "We need you." My heart thundered. A simple phrase, yet it carried the weight of 15 years. I hadn't been home in ages. What could go wrong? As I drove, the crisp autumn air swept around me, biting through the window. Each mile pulled me back into a past I thought I had left. The trees blurred by in flashes of fiery red and gold, but all I could think about was the empty seat at the table. I arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows across the yard. The house looked unchanged, eerily quaint, as if frozen in time. I stepped out, heart racing, about to face a lifetime of unresolved tension. "Mom." My voice cracked, sounding small against the silence. No answer, just an unsettling quiet. I could almost hear my heartbeat over the fading light. That knot in my stomach twisted tighter. Was I too late? A chill swept through the stillness, the kind that makes your skin prickle. I stepped inside, suppressing a shiver. The familiar scent of pumpkin pie filled the air. But something felt off. The lights flickered overhead, shadows danced along walls. "Anyone home?" I tried again, hoping to drown out the silence. The sound echoed back, mocking me. I wandered into the living room. The fireplace lay cold, unlit. A deep sense of foreboding knotted within me. No laughter had spilled into this space, no family warmth. Where were they? The walls were adorned with old photos, every smile a ghost of happier times. I reached out to touch one, my fingers grazing the glass, the edges smooth and cold. Memories flooded in. Holidays spent laughing and sharing stories. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, hot against my trembling fingers. "Maybe they're just running late," I whispered, but the reassurance fell flat. Then, I noticed a door slightly ajar at the end of the hall. My breath halted. It seemed to call me. Hesitant, I stepped forward, each foot feeling heavier than the last, as if the house was trying to hold me back. I pushed it open. Inside was a dimly lit room, shadows stretching like fingers across the walls. My stomach dropped. Should I really be here? I didn't know what I would find. But I stepped in. The air felt thick, humid. I could taste fear on my tongue. And then I saw it, a mass of letters scattered across the old wooden desk. My heart raced as I picked one up. Each envelope bore my name. Memories flooded back. My hands shook as I opened the first. "Dad, we need you, now more than ever." It was dated 2 years ago. Confusion washed over me like icy water. What had I missed? I fell to my knees, the weight of their words crashing down. What was going on? The truth loomed just beyond my grasp, filling the air with tension. And all I could do was sit there, surrounded by the shadows of unanswered questions. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The ground felt unsteady beneath my knees as I stared at the letters scattered around me, each one bearing the same desperate plea. "Dad, we need you." My throat tightened, the air around me thick with unspoken words and unheard cries for help. I struggled to comprehend how I had managed to stay away all this time, how I had missed their calls for support, for guidance, for the simple comfort of my presence. A cacophony of regret filled the silence, amplifying the heartache of missed birthdays and broken promises. I was trapped in this room of shadows, surrounded by echoes of a family that had moved on without me. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It chimed softly, the sound barely cutting through the tension. For years since I had last set foot in this house, and still the clock ticked on, oblivious to the lives intertwined within its grasp. Each letter I picked up cracked open the brittle shell of my heart. They were filled with vulnerability, desperation, and a longing that made me feel unworthy. The dates on them scrolled through my mind like the remnant of a film I wished I had never seen. My daughter's first heartbreak, my son's struggles in school, my wife's quiet despair. Each moment, each letter, was a reminder of my absence. With trembling hands, I turned to the one marked with the latest date. It was longer, filled with an unmistakable sense of urgency. My breath caught as I unfolded it, revealing the handwritten words that blurred with my tears. Dad, please come back. We need you for Thanksgiving, but it's more than that. Mom can't do it alone anymore. I'm scared, and we all miss you. You're still our dad, even if you don't feel like it. We believe you can be here for us. I felt as if 1,000 knives pierced my heart. I had left my family behind, trapped in my own world, believing that I was protecting them by staying away. How could I have been so naive? The furnace began to hum in the background, a reminder that life existed beyond these walls, that the outside world still spun on its axis. I wiped away my tears, trying to gather my thoughts. Perhaps I could salvage this, even if it felt like trying to hold water in cupped hands. Suddenly, the sound of laughter drifted through the hall. I froze, listening intently. It came again, muffled and light, a melody of happiness that seemed alien yet familiar. Hope surged in me like a breath of fresh air, but along with it came a wave of anxiety. Could they really forgive me? Would they even want to see me after all this time? Navigating through the familiar but foreign space, I made my way towards the sound. I glanced into the half-open door of what had once been my children's playroom. Now dressed for a holiday gathering, colorful decorations hung from the walls, and a hastily arranged table awaited the feast. There they were, my wife, her laughter echoing as she shared stories with my children. Their joy pierced through the veil of tension that hung around me. I felt both an exhilarating rush of warmth and a crushing wave of self-doubt. Would it be selfish to join them now? I lingered in the doorway, watching the intricate dynamics of a family that had somehow continued to thrive, even without me. Just as I took a breath to step forward, the laughter subsided, and silence overcame the room. It felt as if the world held its breath. My heart raced as they turned in unison, faces painted with shock. Dad, my daughter's voice quivered, uncertainty lacing her words. Surprise? I managed to murmur, though it hardly sounded convincing. Then, a moment of stillness stretched like a taut string. Would they welcome me back? The anticipation hung heavy, and just before I could explain, my phone buzzed sharply in my pocket, shattering the fragile silence. I pulled it out, an unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. I hesitated only for a moment before answering. Hello? My voice felt foreign even to my own ears. Mr. Johnson, we need to talk. It's about your family. The voice on the other end was too calm, too measured. And just like that, the warmth in the room faded. The laughter and familiarity turned to shadows. The words thundered in my mind like a storm crashing against the shore. My heart sank as I sensed that whatever was on the other side of this conversation could change everything. Your family is in trouble, the voice continued, drawing me deeper into the abyss of fear. Trouble? I whispered, glancing back at the faces I had longed to see. They were watching me with hesitant hope, and I knew whatever was coming next could shatter my already splintered world. Please just come to the hospital. The voice faded, leaving me suspended between two worlds, between the love that stood before me and the impending darkness that promised to swallow it whole. The shadows flickered under the soft glow of the string lights strung around the room, shaking against the tumult within me. My family's faces, a blend of confusion, hope, and guarded trepidation, hovered at the edge of my consciousness as the call lingered in the air, heavy with implications. Dad. My daughter's voice sliced through the silence again, this time steadier, tinged with concern. She took a tentative step towards me, her eyes searching mine for answers I didn't have. I didn't know how to respond. My mind raced with the message that had cracked my world open. Your family is in trouble. Those words curled around my stomach, squeezing it tighter with every pulse of concern that raced through me. I struggled to voice the panic brewing within, caught between the instinct to protect and the overwhelming need to engage anew. We just got a call, I stammered, glancing back at my phone. My hand trembled with the buzz of adrenaline, driving a wedge deeper into the fragile bond forming before me. It's about something at the hospital. A flicker of dread crossed my wife's face, shadows playing across her features. What do you mean? Is it one of the kids? The worry and love entwined in her voice broke me further. I shook my head forcefully, lest the terrible idea take root. No, I don't know. I faltered, grappling for clarity in the suffocating fog of fear that clouded my judgment. They said it was urgent. Anxiously, I turned my gaze back to the children, who stood like lost ships adrift on a dark sea. My son had tightened his grip on his sister's hand, his brow furrowed as he tried to process the shift in the atmosphere. Doesn't he matter? We're all together, and you just came back. His voice was small but hopeful, bursting like a tender bud against the harsh winds of uncertainty. But the weight of that phone call was a collapsing star, and my heart felt too heavy to carry any light or love. I want to stay, I whispered, the words barely leaving my lips. But as the fear pulsed, threatening to drown the quiet hope that had glimmered for those few moments, I felt the tether to that desire starting to fray. But I need to know what this is about first. Please. I closed my eyes, willing clarity to find me. Let me go? My wife inhaled sharply, barely containing a wave of emotions that ricocheted around the room. We can't keep living in this shadow, Brian. You can't just disappear when things get tough. The guilt that washed over me felt like ice, stealing my breath. I know, I replied, my voice trembling. But running hasn't fixed anything. I wasn't here when you all needed me. But this can't be how it ends. There was a simmering silence before my daughter stepped in close. We can't lose you again, she said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. What if something or someone is wrong? Her question hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. I felt a wave of love and panic surge together. She was right. I had to face whatever was causing the shadows to swell over us. With a deep breath, I turned my back to the fragile warmth of my family, their hesitant support barely a thread tethering me to this moment. I'll be back as soon as I can. I promise. Just stay here. As I stepped out into the brisk night air, the world felt completely transformed. Each breath was sharp with the realization that I was not just a father walking away, but a man fleeing from an encircling storm, unsettling and alien, spreading its dark tendrils towards the very heart of my family. Racing towards the hospital, I felt the chill seep into my bones much like the regrets I had carried. What could possibly be waiting for me there? Each honk of passing cars felt like a pulse echoing in my head the closer I got, the more frantic the rhythm became. Upon arriving, I barely acknowledged the receptionist's inquiries. My mind was a whirlpool of worst-case scenarios as I advanced through the sterile halls, prayers tumbling out that it wasn't serious, that I hadn't left my family behind only to be plunged into a loss that would shatter what little steps we had taken together. At last, a nurse appeared, her expression grave yet reassuring. Mr. Johnson? I held on to her words like a lifeline. Yes, what is happening? Are they okay? She nodded slowly, and I felt every beat of my heart echoing in the silent hallway. It's your wife. She's here. It seems she has been under a lot of stress. She collapsed earlier. The words landed like a weight in my gut, causing me to stagger backward. What? No, she can't be. My voice broke as I grasped for the wall to steady myself. Please come with me, the nurse urged gently, leading me towards a small room. As I stepped through the door, fear grasped my throat. There she lay, pale against the stark hospital sheets, the once vibrant woman I adored reduced to an unsettling stillness. There was a machine beside her, beeping softly, its rhythm a heart-wrenching reminder of the fragility of life. The realization crashed over me. The reality I had tried to escape was now invading the very foundation of my hope. I approached her quietly, my heart pounding furiously. Just as I reached the edge of the bed, a doctor entered behind me, cutting through the silence with serious words that promised no easy answers. Mr. Johnson, we need to discuss her condition. A chill rippled down my spine, and as I looked between the doctor and my wife, lying helpless before me, I felt the tapestry of my newfound family thread unraveling one fragile knot at a time. Wait. My voice rose, desperation spilling into the sterile air. Are you saying she might? Before the doctor could respond, I turned to my wife, desperate for any sign of reassurance that she would pull through, that we could patch together this broken family. Her eyelids fluttered slightly, and in that fleeting moment, I dared to hope again. But then, just as quickly, a gurney wheeled past outside the room, a cry echoing faintly. I turned, but when I looked back at her, all I could see was the steady beep of the monitor, a reminder that seconds could mean everything. And then a new message buzzed on my phone from an unknown number. drawing me away from the essential focus on her. It was a visceral reminder that darkness craved attention. I felt torn between two worlds, each moment stretching further apart within me, each choice holding the weight of dread and hope tighter than I had ever known. The sterile room felt both suffocating and surreal, a liminal space where I was forced to confront the fragments of my reality colliding into chaos. The doctor's words washed over me, but they remained indistinct, muddled by the panic surging through my veins like wildfire. "Mr. Johnson," he persisted, his voice steady yet urgent, "we must discuss her condition. The stress she's been under has exacerbated some underlying issues." I shook my head, clinging to the hope flickering like a candle in the storm. "No, I can't do this right now." The stillness of the room swallowed my voice back, and the doctor's solemn expression served as a relentless reminder that I was powerless to halt the impending storm. Suddenly, the soft squeeze of a small hand around my fingers jolted me back from the edge of my despair. I turned to find my daughter standing in the doorway, her wide eyes brimming with worry. "Dad." The world around me blurred, and I quickly wiped away the tears that had begun to escape, caught off guard by the yearning etched on her face. "What are you doing here?" She stepped forward hesitantly, a fragile, calming presence against the disarray. "I wanted to be with you," she said softly. "I'm scared." The fear in her voice mirrored my own, sending a fresh wave of regret crashing over me, drowning out the small breaths of comfort I tried to offer her. "Sweetheart, it's going to be okay," I assured her, though the tremor in my voice belied my conviction. A nurse passed by and glanced at my daughter, her eyes softening. "Why don't you come in and sit with your dad for a moment? I need to check on some things." With a reassuring nod, she ushered the child into the room and, in an act of kindness, gently closed the door behind her. As my daughter climbed onto the bed beside my wife, the silence between us enveloped us like a shroud. I felt the coldness of the wall at my back as I watched her take her mother's hand, her small fingers entwining with my wife's frail ones, holding on as if the connection alone could bridge the chasm of uncertainty stretching before us. "Mama, please wake up," she said softly, brushing a stray hair away from my wife's forehead with the gentleness of a summer breeze. The vulnerability in her voice made the tears come again, this time unabashed, tumbling down like rain on a parched earth. Her eyes darted to me, beseeching, and I hurried to her side, kneeling beside her, enveloping her in my arms. I could feel the warmth of her little body quaking beneath the weight of fear. "I'm here," I murmured, forcing strength into my words. "We're all here." But even as I spoke, the hollow ache of reality pressed against my heart. "Can't you hear her?" she whispered, gazing at her mother, each word imbued with a child's pure yearning. "She needs to get better. We need her." The room spun around me, the beeping machine against the wall marking time in a language I desperately wanted to defy. My wife had been the anchor in our lives, the steady heart of our family, and now, as she lay silent, the fabric of our existence felt unbearably fragile. But as my daughter clung to her mother's hand, a spark ignited somewhere deep within me. The sight of them intertwined, my child desperately wishing for her mother's return, sent a new pulse of urgency racing through my veins. "Hang on, honey," I whispered to my wife, an intense determination breaking through the cloud of despair. "We're not giving up. We're right here." A few moments stretched into what felt like lifetimes, the world beyond the sterile walls distorting into an abstraction while I focused entirely on the two most important people in my life. Just then, my phone buzzed violently on the table beside me, the sudden noise cutting through the fragile tension like a knife. I stared at the screen, a mix of dread and reflexive worry almost paralyzing me. It urged me to remember the shadows lurking outside this moment, a visible reminder of life as complications beyond the hospital room. That I hesitated, but the urgency clawing at my gut forced my hand toward it. As I unlocked it with trembling fingers, the sunken pit of unease widened. Another unknown number, this one marked with a local area code, and a message that sent a fresh wave of tumult crashing over me. "We need to talk about your parents. It's urgent." "Dad." My daughter's voice broke through my reverie, filled with a quiet curiosity and concern that twisted my heart in knots. "Are you okay?" Looking between her worried gaze and the lifeless figure of my wife, I felt a fracture in the very essence of what I thought I could handle. I didn't want to spiral again, not in front of her. Just a message, I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper, unsure how to bear the burden of this next storm brewing in parallel to the one unfolding in front of me. I need to go. The palpitations in my chest surged, clarity mingling shockingly with the new dilemma the message loomed, demanding acknowledgement amidst this fragile moment. But as I rose, ready to direct myself back into the chaotic whirlpool of urgency, the pulse of a machine surged alarmingly, accompanied by a frantic rush of footsteps approaching our door. And in that moment, suspended between heartbreak and fear, I realized that the shadows were not just my own. They were shifting and curling at the edges of my family's existence. With every choice, every hesitant step, I found myself teetering on the precipice of what it meant to truly be present for the ones I loved most. The air thickened with an unspoken intensity as I felt the ground shift underneath me. The door swung open, and a team of nurses rushed in, their movements choreographed by urgency. I stepped aside, my heart racing, as the world around me faded into a blur. I could barely register the nervous energy humming in the room. All I could hear was the pounding of my heart echoing in my ears like a drum. My daughter looked up at me, confusion blooming in her eyes, and I forced a smile that didn't quite reach the corners of my mouth. Her small hand slipped from her mother's and moved to clutch mine, a lifeline amidst the chaos. "What is happening, Dad?" she asked, her voice tremulous. The mere sound of it made me want to break down completely. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said softly, the truth a raw wound in my throat. "But we're going to stay strong. We're going to be okay." My voice shook, betraying my resolve, but the warmth of her grasp kept me anchored in the maelstrom swirling around us. In what felt like an eternity, the medical team worked silently and efficiently at my wife's side. I was frozen, helpless, consumed by a mix of fear and a desperate wish to fight the invisible forces pressing down on us. My gaze shifted from my wife's still face to the monitors, their rhythmic beeping now laced with tension, a sound so familiar yet foreign, charged with an urgency that stole my breath away. Somewhere in the distance, a nurse called for a doctor, her voice cracking slightly. "We need to stabilize her. I'm not getting consistent readings. We might have to consider alternatives." The word hung in the air like a death knell, a somber promise of deeper shadows that I squeezed my daughter's hand tighter, grounding myself in her presence. But as I felt the warmth seep from her fingers, a tide of guilt swelled over me. What if I can't hold this together? I couldn't help but wonder, just as the doctor's warnings raced back into my mind. I should be looking after my family, and here I was, a mere spectator consumed by my own helplessness. What alternatives? I thought aloud, the words slipping out before I could catch them, jolting my daughter from her reverie. "Dad, what does that mean?" she asked, her voice small, burdened by the weight of understanding that no child should bear. I opened my mouth to respond, but found that no words could bridge the chasm of fear undulating between us. Instead, I turned my focus back to my wife, who lay so still that it was as though she were a photograph, frozen in time. The tender memories of laughter, shared glances, and intimate whispers flooded my mind, framing her in a hazy glow that felt so far removed from this sterile nightmare. But a moment later, the doctor burst through the door, his poise a stark contrast to the frantic energy of the nurses. He approached me with a heavy-hearted urgency, his brow furrowed in worry. "Mr. Johnson, we need to discuss the situation right now." "Wait, please," I interjected, the panic bubbling to the surface. "Can't you see my daughter is here? You can't do this right now," I pleaded, gesturing toward the little girl who now stood by my side, clinging to my arm like I was her anchor. "Dad, I'm scared," she whispered again, her courage cracking like fragile glass. In that single moment, the gravity of our reality pressed heavily on my chest. The truth that I had been resisting loomed dangerously close, yet I didn't have the strength to voice it. I wanted to shield her from the sharp edges of our situation, but how could I find comfort when I was crumbling too? Before I could compose myself, a nurse called back to the doctor. "We need him now. Her vitals are dropping." The urgency in her voice sliced through me, and as the medical staff reeled back into action, my daughter looked up at me with her innocent eyes, innocence teetering on the precipice of understanding that I knelt down beside her, forcing myself to take a breath. Listen to me. You have to be brave, okay? I need you to be strong for your mom, I instructed, though I felt like a hypocrite for saying so. She nodded, though the uncertainty in her gaze cut deeper than any blade. But what if she doesn't come back, Dad? The question lodged itself in my throat like a rock. I had no answers, only the gnawing fear creeping in like a thief in the night. All I could offer was a desperate promise. We won't let that happen. We're a family, and we will fight. As the frantic shouts of the medical team faded into the background, I felt something deep within me stir, igniting a flicker of determination. Maybe this wasn't just about survival. Perhaps it was about every moment we had shared, the laughter, the love, the memories that defined us. But as my gaze shifted back towards the chaos at my wife's bedside, I felt the tremors of doubt begin to take hold again. There was a truth I hadn't faced, something lurking in the shadows, and just as I was about to grapple with it, my phone buzzed a second time, louder than before, calling me back to the world outside this infinite struggle. I glanced at the screen, and my heart sank. The message that lit up my phone was not just a continuation, it was a reckoning. We know what happened with your parents. It's time you knew too. Caught in the turbulence of everything unfolding before me, I felt the ground shift again, threatening to consume me entirely. New dangers and revelations awaited, ones that had the power to tear our family apart even more than the tragedy we faced in this room. Dad, my daughter's voice, full of concern, lured me back to her side. But this time, I couldn't ignore the shadows closing in. Our world was no longer merely about holding on. It had morphed into a battle against unseen forces that I wasn't sure we could fight. And as the weight of that realization bore down on me, an urgent decision loomed just beyond my grasp. The low hum of fluorescent lights filled the room as I stood frozen, my phone's screen still aglow with that damning message. I felt like I was teetering on the edge of a precipice, ready to fall into an abyss. My daughter's small voice broke through the churning storm in my mind, pulling me back into the present moment, into the urgency that filled our makeshift sanctuary. Dad, what's wrong? She asked again, her brow furrowed with worry that I swallowed hard, still reeling from the weight of the message that had wound itself around my heart like a twisted vine. It's nothing, sweetheart, I lied, forcing a smile despite the anxiety clawing at my insides. Just a little notification. Everything is going to be okay. But I could hear the tremor in my own voice, and the look in her eyes told me she could too. The sincerity of my words was diminishing, fading like the flickering light above us. I fought against the urge to crumble, turning my attention back to the chaos unfolding before us. Nurses rushed to tend to my wife, their faces set in resolute expressions as they barked orders, trying to steady her fading vitals. Sir, one of the nurses called out, and I turned to see her beckoning me to join them, urgency swirling in her voice. We need to see if she responds to some familiar voices. Okay, I said, my heart racing. What do I do? Talk to her. Call her name, she instructed, her tone softening slightly as she assessed my daughter's frightened features. It might help. I knelt again beside my wife, clutching my daughter's tiny hand tight in my grasp. Mom, can you hear me? I spoke, my voice rising with desperation. It's us. It's me and our little girl. We're right here. Silence hung in the air, heavy and thick. I could hear the machines working, the frantic beeping of the monitors marking the pulse of our collective anxiety. I leaned closer, allowing my daughter to step forward, her small frame trembling as she brushed her fingers against her mother's hand. Mommy, I'm here, she whispered, the innocence in her voice breaking my heart wide open. I miss you. Please come back. There was a flicker in my wife's eyelids, a slight flutter, and I seized that glimmer of hope. See, honey, she can hear us. I excitedly encouraged, trying to wrap my mind around that fragile moment. We just need to keep talking to her. But just as I thought we had found a small break in the clouds, a sudden silence fell across the room. The energy shifted, the nurses tense, exchanging glances that told stories too heavy for me to bear. I felt the weight of their shared understanding, the gravity of my wife's condition creeping back in like an unwelcome shadow. Please, come on. You have to fight. Just a little longer. I pleaded into the stillness, my voice thick with emotion. There are still so many things to do, So many places to go. We haven't finished our dance, my love. I need you, our little girl needs you. Please come back to us. The nurses moved into action again, their hurried whispers blending with my sonorous prayers. Everything within me screamed for my wife to respond, to give us even the smallest sign that she was still fighting, still holding on. But with every echoing beep from the machines, that hope grew more fragile, like fine glass teetering on the edge of splintering. As the seconds slipped by, desperation clawed at my throat, turning my words into a mere whisper. I can't do this without you, don't leave us, I murmured, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. I felt my daughter's fingers intertwining with mine, her grip tightening, as if she understood the weight of the world resting upon our shoulders. Then, the phone buzzed again in my pocket, a violent reminder of the outside world. I hesitated, torn between two battles, the one before me, desperate to hold on to my wife, and the one lurking in the shadows of that strange message still awaiting my attention. Guilt surged through me at the thought of even looking at it. Here I was, on the precipice of losing everything, and yet, there was a pull to discover what that message held, an insatiable curiosity that clawed at me. Daddy? My daughter asked, her wide eyes glistening with unshed tears. What if Mom can't come back? The honesty of her question shattered me, leaving cracked edges in its wake. How could I answer her truthfully without shattering her spirit? We have to believe she is still fighting, I replied, my voice cracking under the weight of my dawning realization that the battle wasn't just about her recovery. As the chaos unfolded around us, a chilling thought crept over me. What if the shadows that beckoned from my phone held answers that could unravel the very fabric of our family? And so, under the blanket of uncertainty, I made a decision. Honey, I urged, squeezing her small hand even tighter, just for a second, I need to check something. Will you keep talking to your mom? Her nod was small, a flicker of her strength shining through her vulnerability. I stepped back, my heart racing not just with fear, but with the undeniable knowledge that every choice I made now could alter the course of our lives. With trembling hands, I pulled my phone from my pocket, its screen flashing that message again. I held my breath, my heart teetering on the brink of deep unease. But before I could navigate to the text, the beeping of the monitor transformed from a steady rhythm into a dissonant cry, a sound I feared, the sound that could rip this fragile moment apart. Get the doctor, a nurse shouted, her voice slicing through my veil of dread. As their voices rose, my world tilted once more, each heartbeat echoing the silent war within me, each breath weighted with the knowledge that revelations awaited, both heartbreaking and crucial. There was no turning back now. Whatever lay hidden in that message could threaten our very existence, and I had to confront it. And as I prepared myself to face the impending storm, I realized that no matter what I discovered, my fight was no longer just for her. It was for the very soul of our family. The fluorescent lights continued to hum their sorrowful tune, a relentless reminder of the reality pressing down on me like a heavy cloak. As the nurse rushed past, her expression grave, I felt myself being pulled further into the undertow of despair, the message in my pocket a potent reminder that life continued to churn outside this sterile bubble. Please, Mommy, I love you, my daughter repeated softly, her little voice a mantra fragile yet unwavering. I admired her brave attempt, using her little arms to cradle the thin, lifeless hand of the woman who had always been her son. How had we reached this point? I had architecture to build, dreams we had yet to fulfill, but here we lingered on the precipice of oblivion, and I squeezed my daughter's hand, as if through sheer will I could coax life back into my wife, our tether stronger than the chaos around us. You're doing great, sweet pea, I whispered, hoping my words could be a balm to her fear, to mine. Yet, with every second that ticked by, every moment where we clung to hope like a fragile thread, I felt reality closing in, like the walls were inching toward me, closing off our warmth from the world. The room darkened, shadows creeping into the edges of my vision as that message burned a hole in my pocket. At that moment, I understood what it meant to feel utterly divided. The devotion I felt for my wife, hanging on the edge of existence, battled against the deep-set urgency that whispered to me about the truth hidden behind that text. Dad, my daughter's voice broke through the fog of hopelessness. pulling me back. Her bright eyes were now clouded with unshed tears. What if she could hear me, but she can't wake up? If only there were an answer to soothe her heart. I wanted so desperately to give her some semblance of security amidst this swirling storm of uncertainty. Even if she can't wake up, she can feel our love. We must keep showing her, I said, though my voice cracked and wavered with the burden of my own doubts. Another nurse swept in, clipboard in hand, asking questions, her voice clinical yet soft. I stood aside, allowing my daughter to continue speaking to her mother. It gave me a moment to gather shattered thoughts, to fight against the tide of despair that wanted to drag me down with it. Was then that a familiar face stepped into the room, my brother, Lucas, looking worried yet resolute. He hadn't been part of my wife's journey for a while, too wrapped up in his own career and family. The sight of him filled me with a mix of anger and relief, my heart yearning for family, yet resenting the feeling of neglect. "Hey," he said softly, stepping closer and giving my daughter a reassuring smile. I came as soon as I heard. His voice trailed off at the sight of my wife, and for a moment, the room swallowed us whole in silence. How is she?" Lucas stammered, looking between us with concern as though trying to piece together a puzzle spanning more than just this moment. "Not good," I replied, my voice cautious, fearful that whatever hope waited outside these walls might unspool the fragile thread of control I clung to. "We'll figure this out," he murmured. "You're not alone, you know." Before I could respond, the shrill sound of the monitor began to distort, its rhythm quickening in alarming bursts. Panic set in. I shot a glance at the nurse, who immediately rushed back to her task, speaking into the radio clipped to her shoulder as chaos erupted anew. I dared to look at my daughter. Her face, usually so animated, now wore an expression of stark terror. "Please, Mommy, come back," she cried, tears spilling over as she pressed her forehead against her mother's limp hand. My heart shattered at the sight, the swell of sorrow almost unbearable to witness. The whirring and snapping of machines crescendoed, while the air thickened with a palpable tension. Whatever was happening, it felt monumental. Suddenly, everything exploded into a flurry of movement. Doctors surged in, their masks tight over their mouths, but their eyes sharp with purpose. I felt utterly lost in a maelstrom of anxiety. "Stay with your sister," Lucas instructed gently, taking firm hold of my daughter's shoulders to keep her steady. "I'm going to see if they need me." As he slipped away, I turned again towards my wife, helplessness screaming in my ears. I could barely hold on to my own sanity, while that ominous message in my pocket pushed against me, desperate for attention. And just like that, the urgency flooded back, a warning, a plea binding me to uncover whatever dark secrets it revealed. Yet, just as I prepared to confront it, the room fell its darkest. A sudden shout echoed across the room, loud enough to arrest every soul present. "We need more time. We need the AED." The words echoed like a bell tolling, reverberating in my chest and rendering me breathless. "Is she?" I found myself voicing the most unthinkable question, fingers trembling as I held tightly to the edge of her bed. "I'm sorry, sir, just give us a moment." The lead doctor's voice took on a grim but determined edge, while my heart began to race, each pulse somewhere deep inside me screaming for relief, for clarity. And then it happened just as those around me focused on my wife. My phone buzzed once more and slipped free from my pocket, cascading to the floor with a heavy thud. The screen flashed its secret like a beacon, moments blurring together. Fear escalated within me. The message I'd been avoiding had escalated to loud urgency. Whoever awaited on the other end was part of this half-life. I was caught in.as. I knelt to retrieve the phone, breaths tightening in my throat. I felt the fabric of my life shifting. Whatever waited inside that screen had the power to unravel everything. But I was too late. Just as I picked it up, time froze, and the room erupted into chaos once more as my wife's monitor let out a haunting, mournful ring. The words on the screen faded from my mind as I grasped the full weight of the moment spiraling before me. The nurse's frantic actions felt foreign, each gesture stretching to impossible lengths under the enormity of my fear and grief. I stood suspended between two realities, enveloped by the swell of uncertainty. And just like that, the sobering thought struck me: I was no longer just a father or a husband. I was standing at a crossroad that could change every fiber of who I was. With a trembling heart, I inhaled the fading hope and embraced the darkness of the impending unknown. All I could do was await the next harrowing revelation life was poised to throw my way. The air in the room grew thick and cloying, a palpable mixture of panic and dread. I could barely focus on the frantic cries buzzing around me, the doctors, the nurses, my daughter's voice piercing through the symphony of chaos like a siren's wail. The fluorescent lights blared above, only highlighting the shadows creeping deeper into our lives. Nothing made sense anymore as I grappled with the extremities of despair and the flicker of hope, both unnervingly intertwined. I stood frozen, phone clutched in my hand. Every instinct screamed at me to look at the message, to understand the urgency wrapped up in those words. But I hesitated, a tempest raging within. What could be more urgent than what was happening right in front of me, the woman I loved, perhaps slipping away? I didn't want to process anything else beyond this heart-wrenching moment. But the pull of that text hung heavy in the air. Please, Mommy, don't leave us. My daughter's voice continued to rise, a chorus of desperation filling the room as she clung to her mother's hand, tears streaming down her cheeks like a waterfall of heartbreak. I felt the tremors of her tiny body echoing in my chest. I reached out to stroke her hair, offering what little comfort I could. It was a moment suspended in time, pure and raw. "Shoo," I murmured, though my own voice cracked under the weight of my sorrow. "We're here. We love her, and that's all that matters right now." Lucas returned, swallowing hard as he assessed the scene. His presence had become both a lifeline and a cause of resentment. How could he come here now, after so long, when things were this shattered? "Is everything okay?" he asked quietly, though even his voice faltered, caught in the tension of the moment. "I don't know," I replied, giving him a look that pleaded for understanding. "I can't lose her, Lucas. Stay strong, brother." His eyes carried a mix of resolve and empathy. "No matter what happens, you have to stay strong for her, for your daughter." And in that moment, a surge of fierce love ignited within me. If I could not protect her from harm, shielding our daughter from despair became my only mission. Perhaps that was all I had left to cling to. As the monitors beeped erratically, I pressed a kiss on my daughter's forehead, grounding both her and myself. Just then, a nurse hurried through the door, urgency radiating off her every move. She paced to a nurse stationed at the side, voices curling around whispers of medical jargon I couldn't grasp. And then the doctor spoke, her voice an anchor in the tumult. "We need to manually stabilize her. We can't afford to waste any more time." All around us, the world began to blur, a flipping of pages in a book I never wanted to read. Muffled words and the rustling of scrubs faded into a dull echo as I felt the reality of the moment envelop me. I turned my attention to my daughter, who was clutching her mother's hand, as if willing her to awaken with fierce determination. I wished I could share that belief, but that would mean facing the truth that my wife may never come back to us. "Can you tell her a story?" I spoke, forcing my voice to break through the chaos. "She has always loved your stories. Maybe it will bring her back." My daughter looked up with wide eyes, still glistening with tears, but carrying the weight of a child's innocent hope. "Okay, Daddy," she quivered. "I can tell her about the princess who found her way back home." With that, she leaned closer to her mother, her small voice cracking the silence, pouring heart and soul into the tale. I felt a blend of pride and unbearable sadness as I watched her do what I felt utterly incapable of, connect with love amid the chaos. But my thoughts drifted back to the phone in my pocket. My heart began to pound as I pulled it free, heart racing with each alert chime. What did the message reveal? I couldn't turn away from it any longer. Against the overwhelming fear creeping upon me, I turned it on. The screen lit up, and there it was, the message that sent a chill down my spine. "Come home now. It's important. We need to talk." The sender was no longer just a name. It was my sister, the one who had been buried beneath the layers of family estrangement. And as my heart thudded in dismay, a new wave of questions invaded my mind. What could she possibly want to discuss at a time like this? Had something happened at home? Was anything ever going to be okay? The ornate details of my wife's situation blurred with every new thought that sliced through my consciousness. Would anything truly resolve if I returned home? Or would it only deepen the already unfathomable divide? "Dad, look," My daughter's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts. She was still telling her tale, and her small finger pointed at her mother, excitement lighting up her face. She moved, didn't she? Mommy heard me. Before I could respond, a flurry of commotion erupted as doctors executed their frantic regimens. I noticed the deliberation in their eyes. The divide they held between what's dying and what's saving for my wife was all at once both, that I watched my daughter's fragile spirit flicker, a candle fighting against an unrelenting gale. But the grimace on my wife's face told a different story. I felt the tension crawl onto my skin, wrapping tight around my throat. Despair swallowed my heart whole, clashing with that sacred thread of hope my daughter held so tightly. Time slipped through my fingers like water, and as I stood there, I felt the abyss opening beneath me. I was standing at a precipice, a miserable crossroads between universes. In that moment, a whisper curled around the truth. This moment was not just about survival, but about the choice of which world I would fight to keep alive. The chaos unfolded around me as I steadied myself amidst the burden of anguish rising painfully in my chest. I struggled to stay present, to be a father and a husband amid forces pulling me everywhere except here. But in those last moments before the world spiraled further out of control, a piece of me wondered what would waiting back home yield. What uncertainty lay in the shadows of that message, and could I afford to shift my focus for just a second? Then, as my heart constricted, the machines began to stabilize, and for a fleeting moment, time hustled to a painful stop. The air crackled with a looming uncertainty, and I was left in a suspended solitude, praying to survive the tidal wave of revelations that awaited both in the hospital room and beyond. The beeping of the monitors softened, becoming an eerie lullaby that chased away the chaos, if only for a moment. In that stillness, I dared to breathe. I watched my daughter, her small hands still wrapped around her mother's, clutching tightly, eyes imploring. The sparks of hope ignited once again like the flicker of candle flames ready to be snuffed out. Mommy will come back to us. I whispered more to myself than to them, but doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind. Each second stretched unbearably long, entangled with the tormenting uncertainty of my wife's condition. What if her body had grown too weary, too tired of fighting? The thought sent cold shivers through my spine. Daddy? My daughter's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts again, small and fragile. What if the princess can't find her way home? I looked at her then, really looked, and saw a well of deep concentration overlaid with fear creeping into her big, innocent eyes. Even if the princess gets lost, she always finds a way back, I said, fighting to inject steadiness into my voice. It might take longer than she thought, but she will never give up. Just like your mommy would never give up on finding us. I wanted to believe my own words, though they felt heavily borrowed. Can I tell her a different story? Swallowing hard, I nodded. She straightened up and began weaving a tale of a brave knight who ventured across daunting mountains, facing fierce storms to rescue a lost kingdom. As she spoke, my heart ached and swelled, how her imagination unfurled in vivid colors, carving out space for both hope and despair. In the midst of her storytelling, a flood of nurses rushed through the door again, a gust of movement and certainty, igniting chaos anew. The doctor followed, her brow furrowed, lifting my spirits with the promise of answers I so desperately craved. Sir, can you step outside for a moment? We need to discuss her condition, she said, the weight of those words clinging heavily to the air. Tension knotted in my gut. Somehow, stepping into the waiting room felt like unraveling a thread that held everything together. What is happening? Is she? I dared, dread creeping into the question. We need to talk to you. Just come with me, she replied, a mixture of compassion and urgency coloring her tone. Reluctantly, I left my daughter there, her voice a soft lull in the storm of noise around us, lingering like a haunting melody. The burden of her small storytelling fell soundlessly onto my shoulders as I followed the doctor. Each step felt like moving through molasses as I left my daughter vulnerable and alone in a room filled with darkness encroaching. The waiting room was harsh, a sterile environment that felt worlds away from the one I had just exited. I could feel the muffled cries and prayers echoing from my daughter, vibrating like a distant heartbeat. Your wife is stable for now, the doctor began, but her voice droned under the weight of my pounding heart. However, We have to be clear about the situation. We don't know how long she will remain this way. Uncertainty churned in my stomach. The doctor's expression strayed from empathetic to almost conspiratorial. We're at a critical juncture. The next few days will tell us a lot. Can't you do something? I implored, desperation clawing at every word. She can't just slip away with no fight. There must be hope, something we can try. Another doctor, older and graver, stepped into the fray. We've exhausted all options available at this stage. Any further intervention comes with significant risks. Hope shattered like glass around me, glittering on the floor of my consciousness. What risks? I forced myself to ask, heart pounding relentlessly. The older doctor responded, as if each word was a heavy weight he could hardly bear to say. The possibility of further trauma, pain management complications, and ultimately, a less hopeful outcome. A sick swirl of emotions washed over me there. In that harsh waiting room, hung the reality that my wife's life was now a series of equations balanced on life and death, just as fragile as the light in her eyes when she laughed, which seemed light years away. Can I see her? Can I be with my daughter? I asked finally, the depths of my own heart rising up to drown me in anxiety and sorrow. Yes, she needs you, the doctor said gently, guiding me back toward the room. As I stood there, my daughter still weaving her tales, I couldn't shake the knot of desperation tightening in my chest. Out there, beyond those walls and sterile corridors, was my sister's message still pulling at me, mingling with the anguish brewing inside. I felt like I was slowly pulling apart at the seams. We entered the room, the pulse of the machinery reminding me of the fragile balance we lived each moment. I knelt beside my daughter, who was still immersed in her story. Did you finish the princess story? I prompted, hoping to pull a sliver of joy back into existence. No, Daddy, she replied with innocent seriousness. I have to finish it when Mommy wakes up. Time suspended then, spanning across an unfathomable expanse. I brushed my fingers through her hair, positivity woven tightly into the fabric of our shared narrative. Her faith was a lifeline I clung to. But just as a flicker might catch fire, a bright nurse arrived, a soft smile on her face. You know, I showed your wife a picture of your daughter before she came in, she said gently. She held on strong, even then. There's a part of her still here. That flicker jostled the heavy dread, a momentary light in that thick fog of darkness. For a heartbeat, I allowed myself to imagine her eyes sparkling with recognition and love. But as I held my family in that small frame of time, my phone buzzed once again, pulling me back into the chaotic thrum of reality. With trembling hands, I pulled it out to see a single line of text from my sister. Please, you can't avoid this. We need each other now more than ever. Caught between the world of my wife and daughter and the shadows of my past, a new wave of confusion and emotion crashed over me. I left them both in that room, lost in a universe where love thrived despite uncertainty, while I stood at the precipice of the revelations that awaited me outside, unsure which world was worthy of my impossible choice. When I finally stepped outside the hospital room, the air felt heavy, imbued with all the unsaid prayers and battered hopes bouncing off the sterile walls around me. Each heartbeat thudded in my ears, a reminder of the life still pulsing within me, propelling me forward toward the unknown waiting just beyond the threshold of that small room. My sister's text flickered in my mind, a ghost pulling at my heartstrings, urging me to confront the shadows of a past I had tried so hard to evade. I was so buried in my own turmoil that I hadn't even considered how my absence had affected her. The family I had left behind when I chose to walk the other way, not realizing at the time that each step away had stirred a storm within them too. A storm that now clashed violently against the fragile currents holding my own family together. Guilt gnawed at my insides as I strode to the sparsely furnished waiting room where families, etched with varying degrees of pain, sat like silent shadows against the unyielding fluorescent lights. The looming presence of my sister weighed heavily upon my heart. But could I bear the burden she may carry? Closing my eyes, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for a confrontation with a past drenched in regret. The door swung open, revealing my sister's silhouette, a spectral reminder of shared history. I watched her step forward, uncertainty flickering across her face like a candle's wavering flame. The warmth I once felt in her presence felt like it had grown cold over time, and a shroud of awkward silence enveloped us. "Hi," I choked out, my voice barely above a whisper. "Brian," she replied, her own voice trembling. "Thank you for coming. I got your message," I started, but she cut me off. Stepping closer, determination brushed the shadows from her brows. "It's not about that right now. It's about Mom and Dad." Her words hit me like a tidal wave, cresting over the barricade ID built around my heart. What? What do you mean?" I stammered, confusion steeping in my mind. "My parents," she clarified, anguish creeping into her tone. "They're sick. There's a reason we haven't heard from them. They were too proud and scared to reach out. Just like you." The truth of her words stunned me. My parents, whom I thought of as distant figures drifting through my past, were fighting battles of their own, unforgave wounds and illness hidden beneath layers of pride. The shadows I had avoided were all too real. My knees threatened to buckle as the weight of it all descended upon me. "They need you," she continued, her voice breaking. "They want to mend things before it's too late." I grappled with the silence, time stretching over me like a thin sheet of glass. This revelation carved a deep crevice in my heart. I can't just leave them, not after my words failed me, and shame flooded my system. "Oh, Brian, they need you more now than ever." "We all do," she pleaded, desperation flaring in her eyes. That I thought of my wife, unconscious in a hospital bed back in that small room, and the child who saw the universe within the flicker of her mother's eyelids. My heart was divided, torn between the two families that needed me. I could feel the weight of the choice surging through my veins, a violent tempest threatening to consume me whole. But then, through the monotony of the hospital's muted chaos, I heard her voice in my heart, my daughter's steady, fragile yearning to believe in magic, in the resilience of love and family. In what felt like a moment of divine clarity, I understood love was never a finite resource. It intertwined, expanded, and echoed through our very souls. That I took a deep breath, looking at my sister. "What do we do?" Her face brightened, as if I had breathed life into something dormant between us. "We go home. We go as a family together." With each passing second, a sense of resolve emerged, solidifying within my heart. I would not crumble under the weight of the past. I would weave it into the story of our future. I returned to the room, my blood surging with renewed vigor. My daughter looked up at me as I stepped inside, her eyes wide with timid hope. "Daddy, are you okay?" "More than okay, sweetheart. We're going to fix this. We're going to fight," I proclaimed, not just to her, but to the room itself. As I knelt beside her, my hands enveloping hers, warmth seeped into my soul, love surged, binding us closer amidst the chaos. Then I glanced at my wife, her stillness stirring buried emotions within me, a fear of loss intertwined with a steadfast hope. In that moment, I understood that no matter how far apart we drifted, family ties could be salvaged through sheer will and grace. "Mommy," my daughter began, her little voice breaking through the noise filling the room. "Tell her about the brave night." And as she leaned forward, recounting her tales of adventure and resilience, I felt the boundaries within my heart shift. The spaces left abandoned now overflowed with love. Each word she spoke ignited something primal within me, a flickering light that promised to guide us home. We were bound together by a thread stronger than any distance or time. We would face the storms ahead, the shared weight of heartbreak and healing. And in that moment, amidst the rising tide of uncertainty, I made a promise to be there for my whole family, to embrace every moment, from the laughter of my daughter to the struggles of my wife and the unexpected burdens of my past. Tears glistened in my eyes as I turned to my sister, gratitude unspooling between us. Let us bring all of them home." As we found our footing, stepping outside the sacred heart of the hospital, I remembered my daughter's words. The tales we spun together would not just be stories, but echoes reverberating throughout the tapestry of our lives. I held the promise of our family in the depths of my being, determined to thread love through every moment from that day forward. "Together," I whispered, as we embraced the light and walked back toward the darkness, ready to confront whatever awaited us on the other side, united, strong, and unyielding. "Together, even if it's hard, we will find our way back home," I whispered to myself, sealing it with an unshakable resolve. And as we stepped forward, a clearer horizon began to unfold before us. each heartbeat aligning in harmony against the chaos of yesterday. Unearthing a truth that would be our guiding light. Family was where the heart truly belonged.